What up, nerds? My name is Leslie Smith, and welcome to The Nerdy Narrative, a little channel I created in order to have a place to come and talk about all of the things that I read. My two favorite things I love to do in this life, reading and talking. And this channel allows me to do both of those. So what we're going to talk about today, I get picked on a lot because I do not unhaul books. I just don't. I hang on to everything, and for the most part, it's because I'm going to reread those books. I am a serial rereader, which some people say there's just too many books to read to reread. I disagree. I love to reread because things hit differently the second time. I missed so much the first time, and as I experience things in my life, it changes the story. I may relate to one character as a teenager and relate to a different one as a young adult, and then in my 40s, I might turn around and start relating to characters like Gandalf. You never know. So that's why I don't unhaul. But my husband is like, babe, there's a finite amount of space you have for books. You're going to have to get rid of some. So I am doing my very first unhaul on the channel. It may be my only. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. So I am going to show you the books that I'm going to be unhauling. And I just realized that this is an old mass market paperback of The Lord of the Rings. So of course got the Fellowship of the Rings, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King. And what's hilarious, if you look at the spines, the only spine that is broken is part 2, the Two Towers. So somehow I managed to not break the spine of the first one. Well, there's a little tiny crease there. But yeah, these two look like they've never been read. This one, it's got some love to it. But the reason why I am unhauling these is because I got the collector edition of the bind-up. Stitches protecting it. So I don't need to have an ugly old mass market paperback series, which I'm not going to read anymore because, guys, when you get older, these little bitty tiny books, that print is for the birds. But I have this beautiful, beautiful edition that I cannot wait to read. And yes, I did buy this beautiful, expensive book, and it's meant to be looked at and admired. But you know what? This girl doesn't spend money on stuff that she's just going to look at. I am going to read it. Just like when I read The Way of Kings again, I will be reading those leather-bound editions. You bet your tail. Next up, I will be getting rid of this Penguin Classic edition of Anna Karenina. I love this. It's beautiful. I picked it up when I knew I was going to be reading this with the Literary Discourse Discord. But it's kind of bound pretty tightly, and it has tiny font, and it wasn't going to be comfortable to read. And then I realized that they actually had the French flap edition with the deckled edges that I absolutely love. And that's what I ended up reading. And both of these are getting unhauled. I did enjoy Anna Karenina. Leo Tolstoy is definitely my favorite Russian author. What I have learned about myself over the last couple of years, classics, I tend to get more out of the audiobook. So I'm probably not going to be purchasing many classics in print. I'll be just using the audiobook format. So if I reread Anna Karenina, it will be with an audiobook, not print. And while I did love it, I don't know that I want to reread it, even with an audiobook. Next up is another classic, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Love this edition. Again, the font is so tiny. And again, I really enjoyed the audiobook. The narrator, I think John Lee was the one who did this one. Amazing. I absolutely will be rereading The Count of Monte Cristo audiobook. Audiobook. The next one, another beautiful edition of Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I had not developed a love for audiobooks when I read this, or the section of it I read, because I did DNF it about 300, 400 pages in. I couldn't do it anymore. So I might have been able to finish if I had listened to the audiobook. Maybe for Christy, I will try the audiobook at a later date. But I will never, ever pick this up and read it again. I just won't. So that's going. And another by Fyodor Dostoevsky is The Brothers Karamazov, which I did enjoy by him, which I did read. And I really loved this big old print. I did enjoy it, but like I said, I've realized I enjoy classics as audiobooks. I will 100% reread Brothers Karamazov, but it will be through audiobook. And finally, I have a couple here that are not classics. The first one I'm going to unhaul is going to be Mexican Gothic by Silvio Moreno Garcia. I read it. I loved it. The perpetual suspense of this one was phenomenal. This particular book holds no reread capability for me. The way the author just kept that suspense and dread building, and the end was so unique, it's not one that I'll forget. And it was a slow-paced book, so I do feel that I caught everything I was meant to catch. So this one, I have never once felt like I wanted to reread it. That's not going to change after 2 years, I do not believe, and if so, there's always the library. Mexican Gothic is going along with American Dirt by Janine Cummins. I enjoyed this book very much. I did pick it up because it was the Oprah's book club pick, but I read this in early 2020 when everything was starting to shut down because of the pandemic. I had not yet built the community that I have today. I was looking for any kind of book club I could get into. Oprah's was one I found pretty easily. I read this one. I did enjoy it for what it was meant to do. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. The author was accused of plagiarism, all kind of stuff. None of that had any bearing on me reading it and understanding the fact that the author was trying to draw attention to how immigrants are treated. And she put me in the shoes of an immigrant. And I really appreciate that. Love the story. Again, it's not one I feel that I want to reread. I remember the story so clearly. It's another one I've had for a couple of years that has sat there and looked at me, and I've never once thought, I want to reread that. So what I was kind of doing with this unhaul is I was looking at my books and picking them up and doing that thing where you hold it in your hand and you think, okay, does this bring me joy? And I was like, am I going to reread this? And I was like, nope. So those are the only books I could part with at this time. Now, I do have a lot of books that I haven't read yet. That is possible I'll part with. I doubt it. I really do. I doubt it. And like I said, I don't know if I'll ever have another unhaul. The majority of these books are classics. And now that I know that I prefer classic and audiobooks, that's the way I'm going to go. So we might not see another unhaul unless some publishers do some amazing things like the Lord of the Rings bind up that will allow me to let go of my mass market paperback. While I would have never reread the mass market paperback, I would have probably gotten it from my library to reread it on my Kindle. I still was not willing to not have the Lord of the Rings in my library. Like, I still wanted it in my library, but now that I have a beautiful copy that I love to look at, these that I hide are going bye-bye. Guys, how do you feel about unhauls? Do you purge? Do you do it often? What's your method, your process of choosing what you're going to unhaul? For me, it was simply the question of, is this a book I want to reread? If it was a yes, it stayed. If it was a no, it went. Let me know your process down in the comments below. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope your morning has gotten off to a great start. I hope the rest of your day is absolutely amazing, and I will see you in the next one.